Look at this board. This is where your failures are written. Do you want your name here?
Congratulations, we are very proud to present you with this scholarship.
Thank you, I am truly honored.
As you can see by this trajectory, our user engagement has quadrupled, and we are just getting started.
Mr. Johnson, is that really you?
Yes, Michael. I can't believe it.
Excellent work. See how the graph matches the equation now?
Yes, but how did you calculate this part?
The technology helps us visualize the solution clearly.
In the dusty northern town of Kafanshan, tucked quietly between the red hills of Kaduna State, Nigeria, there lived a boy whose mind seemed sharper than the harmattan wind that swept across the dry earth each December. His name was Awi, though everyone simply called him Toby, and he grew up in a modest compound where the walls were patched with care and hope rather than money. His father, Malam Danjuma, repaired bicycles beneath a wide mango tree older than many of the town's memories, and his mother woke before dawn each morning to fry akara by the roadside, the smell of sizzling bean cakes drifting into the waking village like a promise of survival. They were poor, yes, but they carried dignity like a badge, and Toby, their only child, seemed born with a strange friendship with numbers. As if arithmetic itself whispered secrets into his ears, while other children chased grasshoppers or argued about who could climb the tallest tree, he arranged pebbles into patterns, calculated shadows, counted footsteps, and wondered how many mangoes would fall if the wind shifted direction, and soon the town noticed the quiet boy who spoke little but solved problems nobody else even saw. Yet everything began to change the day a new mathematics teacher arrived at Kafanshan Federal Government School. A man named Mr. Boniface Okiri, whose entrance felt like a storm rolling in without warning, tall, thin, with a face permanently tightened as though kindness had once tried to visit but found no door. His glasses rested sharply on his nose and his voice carried the weight of cold authority that made even the boldest students sit straighter. And when he stepped into the classroom for the first time, silence fell not from respect, but from unease. He scanned the room slowly, his eyes pausing longer on the students in worn uniforms. Then he smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the kind that hinted at judgment already decided, and when he spoke, he declared that in his class there were only two types of students, winners and failures, pointing casually to the front rows filled with children from comfortable homes before gesturing toward the back where Toby sat among farmers' sons and daughters. And from that day forward he introduced a system he called discipline. Yet it was humiliation disguised as education. Each lesson began with a problem written on the board, and students called forward one by one. Those who solved correctly received only a curt acceptable, while those who faltered were ordered to write their names on the board of failures, a corner of the chalkboard where names lingered for days like public announcements of defeat. And slowly the classroom atmosphere changed, laughter faded, confidence shrank, mathematics became something to fear rather than explore. But Toby continued trying, even though he had a quiet weakness, nervousness that crept in whenever eyes watched him closely. And the first time Mr. Boniface called him to solve a quadratic equation, Toby walked forward confidently, knowing he understood the problem. Yet as the teacher stood close behind him, breathing heavily, his hands trembled, he made a small sign error, and the solution collapsed. And without hesitation Mr. Boniface wrote his name on the board in bold chalk letters, Toby, followed by the cold word failure. Laughter whispered from the back benches, and Toby returned to his seat feeling something fragile inside him crack. Yet he did not cry, and in that silent moment, unseen by anyone, a tiny spark ignited within him, the kind that begins quietly but waits patiently to grow into something powerful. The days that followed Toby's first humiliation blended into one another like long stretches of dry road, each morning beginning with hope and each afternoon ending with the sting of doubt. Yet he refused to withdraw into silence the way many of his classmates did, and although Mr. Boniface's board of failures continued to collect names like fallen leaves, Toby kept raising his hand, believing that knowledge deserved courage even when courage shook. But the second time he was called forward, the same thing happened. He understood the algebraic expression perfectly, he even began correctly, yet the teacher's shadow fell over him, heavy and deliberate, and suddenly the numbers blurred, his mind froze, and again his name appeared on the board, larger this time, as though the chalk itself wanted to shout. And whispers spread across the room, some students sympathetic, others amused, while one boy named Shuibu, who often arrived in his father's car and wore neatly pressed uniforms, laughed just loud enough to be heard, a short, mocking laugh that lingered in Toby's ears long after the class ended, and the third time was worse, because by then expectation had turned into pressure, and when Toby made another small mistake, Mr. Boniface didn't just write his name, he stopped the class entirely and addressed everyone, pointing at Toby as though presenting an example of what not to become, saying that background determined destiny, that children of bicycle repairers should not dream of competing with those born into privilege, and the words landed like stones, heavy and unfair, and Toby stood frozen while 30 pairs of eyes watched him absorb the insult, but instead of breaking him, something shifted deep inside, a quiet rebellion forming, not loud, not dramatic, just a steady determination that whispered, "I will prove otherwise," and that evening, after returning home, Toby sat under the dim glow of a kerosene lamp his father used for reading old newspapers, the air filled with the smell of engine oil and fried akra, his mother humming softly while washing plates, and he opened his mathematics notebook, staring at the same types of problems that had betrayed him in class, yet this time he solved them slowly, carefully, checking each step, and when he finished, he turned the page and solved another, until midnight arrived unnoticed, and the next morning he woke before sunrise, before the village roosters argued with the dawn, and he studied again, and within days his routine became relentless. He borrowed old textbooks from the dusty shelf in the school library, the ones no one touched because their covers were faded and their pages smelled of forgotten ambition. He collected past examination papers from neighbors, solved them, marked them, corrected them, and repeated the process, sometimes whispering solutions aloud to strengthen his memory, sometimes writing them in the sand behind his house when paper ran out, and slowly his confidence grew, not the fragile kind that depends on praise, but the deep-rooted confidence that comes from preparation, and though Mr. Boniface remained unchanged, still cold, still distant, Toby's reaction to him evolved. He no longer feared the teacher's breathing behind him, he anticipated it, trained himself to remain calm, practicing mental focus while his younger cousins intentionally distracted him, turning study into endurance, and 3 months passed this way, unnoticed by most, but quietly transforming the boy who once trembled, until one morning the school announced the upcoming inter-school mathematics competition across Kaduna State, the prize a full scholarship sponsored by a technology firm, and excitement rippled through the classrooms. Yet when Mr. Boniface selected the participants, he chose 4 students from the front rows, all considered safe, all familiar faces, and Toby's name was absent, and although disappointment tightened his chest, he did not argue. He simply folded the notice paper, placed it in his bag, and walked away, but fate had already begun rearranging the story behind the scenes. Toby tried to convince himself that not being selected for the competition did not matter, yet as he walked across the dusty school compound that afternoon, the notice board seemed louder than usual, the names of the chosen students staring back at him like a closed gate. And although he kept his expression calm, inside him disappointment settled quietly, not bitter, just heavy, because he knew how much he had prepared, how many dawns he had sacrificed, but he also knew arguing would only confirm what Mr. Boniface believed about him, so he returned to class, opened his notebook, and continued solving problems as though nothing had changed, and it was during that quiet persistence that the school's vice principal, Malam Hassan, noticed him, a thoughtful man who rarely spoke unnecessarily but observed everything with careful attention, and for weeks he had watched Toby borrowing books, staying late, and filling pages with neat calculations, and that afternoon he called Toby into his office, the room small but orderly, shelves lined with files and an old ceiling fan spinning slowly above, and after asking Toby to sit, he spoke gently, saying he had been monitoring his work and believed talent should not be ignored. Toby listened, unsure where the conversation was heading, until Malam Hassan picked up a pen and explained that the competition allowed 5 participants per school, and although only 4 had been selected, he intended to use the 5th slot, a wild card entry, for Toby, and the words hung in the air like unexpected rain during dry season. Toby blinked, almost certain he had misheard, but the vice principal simply nodded, signed the form, and handed it to him, telling him to prepare seriously, because opportunity meant nothing without readiness. And when news of this decision reached Mr. Boniface, he did not react openly, but his eyes hardened, and later that day he looked at Toby across the corridor with silent skepticism, a gaze that suggested failure was inevitable, yet this time Toby did not feel fear. He met the look briefly before turning away, not in submission but in focus, and the days leading up to the competition passed quickly, filled with intense preparation, Toby reviewing algebra, geometry, number theory, and practicing speed under timed conditions, while the selected students formed a group, occasionally studying together, though some still underestimated him, seeing him as an outsider. And finally the morning of the competition arrived, buses lined outside the school, students dressed in neatly pressed uniforms, teachers giving last-minute advice, and the journey to Kaduna City felt both long and short, Toby watching the passing landscape, rehearsing formulas in his mind, and when they reached the hall, he was struck by the scale of the event, banners hanging, students from different schools whispering confidently, the air thick with ambition, and the first round began with challenging questions that eliminated many participants quickly, yet Toby moved through them steadily, his months of preparation guiding him, while others hesitated. He calculated calmly, and when results were announced after each round, his name remained, surprising some teachers who had not expected him to last. And by the second round the competition intensified, problems requiring deeper reasoning, but Toby continued, writing carefully, checking each step, and slowly he advanced again, and by the third round, only 10 students remained from the original 35, and Toby was among them, his quiet presence now attracting attention, whispers spreading about the boy from Kafanshan who solved questions unusually fast, and across the hall Mr. Boniface sat stiffly, his expression unchanged but his tapping foot betraying tension, while Malam Hassan watched with a faint smile, and as the final round approached, 3 students were left, Toby included, the room silent as the hardest problem of the day was distributed, a complex number theory question intended as a tiebreaker, and the finalists bent over their papers, minutes passing slowly, one competitor finished partially, another struggled, and Toby kept writing, his mind steady, until finally he placed his pen down. And in that quiet moment, the boy once labeled a failure had reached the final threshold, standing on the edge of something far bigger than himself. The final round unfolded in a silence so deep that even the software of the ceiling fans seemed loud, and the 3 remaining students leaned over their papers as though the entire world depended on the ink flowing from their pens, the question before them not just difficult but layered. A problem designed to test logic, patience, and creativity at once, and Toby read it twice, then a third time, not rushing, letting the structure settle in his mind, while one competitor quickly scribbled a partial solution and placed her pen down, confident yet uncertain, and the other scratched out attempts repeatedly, his page slowly filling with crossed lines. But Toby remained calm, remembering the countless nights he had practiced under the kerosene lamp, reminding himself that pressure was only another distraction to ignore, and step by step he began constructing the solution, carefully simplifying, substituting, and verifying, until the path became clear, and when he finally wrote the last line, he paused, checked his reasoning once more, and gently set his pen down, unaware that he was the last to finish and that dozens of eyes had turned toward him. The judges collected the papers, whispering among themselves while the students waited, the tension thick, and when the microphone crackled to life, the hall seemed to hold its breath. The announcer began with third place, applause breaking briefly, then second place, louder applause, and then she paused, as announcers always do, stretching the moment until anticipation nearly snapped, before declaring first place, Toby of Kafanshan Federal Government School, and the hall erupted, students clapping, teachers murmuring in surprise, and Toby rose slowly, disbelief mixing with pride, walking toward the stage to receive his certificate and scholarship letter, the judge shaking his hand and praising the elegance of his solution, words that echoed in his mind as he looked down at the paper confirming his victory, while across the hall Mr. Boniface sat frozen, the reality settling heavily, and Malam Hassan leaned slightly toward him, gently remarking that this was the same boy once placed on the board of failures, a statement soft but powerful, and Toby returned to his seat holding the scholarship. The weight of possibility suddenly real, and as the event concluded, teachers approached him, congratulating him, some asking about his preparation, while his teammates, now supportive, clapped his back, and the journey home felt different, the road brighter, the air lighter, and when they reached Kafanshan, the news spread quickly, neighbors visiting, his parents overwhelmed with pride, his father lifting him in an embrace still smelling faintly of bicycle grease, his mother wiping tears with the edge of her scarf. And that night the small house glowed with celebration, yet Toby remained humble, aware that this victory was not the end but the beginning, a doorway opened by perseverance, and somewhere in the quiet of his thoughts, he remembered the board of failures, realizing it had never defined him, it had only ignited the determination that carried him here, and as he looked at the scholarship letter once more, he understood that the journey ahead would be long, but he was ready to walk it, step by step, with the same steady focus that had transformed doubt into triumph. The scholarship changed Toby's life in ways that unfolded gradually, like dawn spreading across the horizon, and within months he found himself leaving the familiar red soil of Kafanchan for the bustling city of Lagos, where the university campus stretched wide with lecture halls, libraries, and students from every corner of Nigeria. And although the environment felt overwhelming at first, Toby approached it the same way he approached difficult equations, patiently and step by step, attending lectures in mathematics and computer science, spending long evenings in the library, and forming friendships with students who shared his hunger for knowledge, yet he never forgot the struggles that shaped him, often recalling the kerosene lamp and the board of failures as motivation whenever coursework became demanding, and his dedication soon earned him recognition, professors noticing his analytical ability, recommending him for research opportunities, and by his second year he was assisting in tutoring sessions, helping other students understand complex concepts, discovering that teaching with kindness built confidence far more effectively than humiliation, and after graduating with distinction he received another opportunity, an international scholarship to pursue a master's degree in the United Kingdom, a journey that expanded his perspective further, exposing him to advanced technology, collaborative learning environments, and innovation-driven education systems, yet even there, he maintained his quiet discipline, focusing on how technology could solve educational challenges back home, and when he completed his degree he made a decision that surprised many. He returned to Nigeria instead of pursuing lucrative offers abroad, believing that his success meant little if it did not uplift others facing the same barriers he once faced, and he joined a technology firm in Abuja, working long hours developing financial software, quickly rising through the ranks due to his problem-solving skills and leadership, and within 3 years he was managing a team, guiding projects that handled complex data systems, and by his late 20s he co-founded his own company, Tech Solutions, a firm focused on innovative digital platforms for finance and education. And growth came rapidly, offices opening in Lagos, Abuja, and Accra, employees increasing to hundreds, and transactions processed reaching billions of naira. Yet despite the success, Toby remained grounded, visiting his parents often, ensuring his father no longer needed to repair bicycles and his mother no longer woke before sunrise to fry akara, transforming their modest home into a comfortable residence while keeping its warmth intact. And as his reputation grew, invitations followed, conferences, partnerships, government consultations, yet one idea remained close to his heart: creating educational tools that encourage struggling students, especially those sitting in back rows, overlooked and underestimated. And so his company began developing interactive mathematics learning software designed to build confidence step by step, emphasizing encouragement, practice, and understanding, the opposite of the fear-driven environment he once experienced. And as the project gained momentum, Toby reflected on how far he had come, from a boy whose name lingered on a chalkboard labeled failure to a man shaping opportunities for thousands, unaware that soon the past would return in an unexpected way, bringing him face to face with the very person who unknowingly sparked his journey. Years passed quietly as Toby's company expanded, and the educational software project began attracting attention from schools across Nigeria, the goal simple yet powerful: to create a system that encouraged students rather than shamed them. And as part of this initiative, the company announced an opening for a mathematics curriculum consultant, someone experienced in classroom teaching who understood where students struggled most, and applications poured in from across the country, stacks of resumes filling the HR department, until one particular CV landed on Toby's desk. And although the name did not immediately register, something about the experience listed: years of teaching mathematics, multiple transfers, public school background, caught his attention, and he scheduled the candidate for an interview, unaware of the twist waiting behind that decision. Meanwhile, the applicant, Mr. Boniface Okiri, had not enjoyed the same smooth journey through time. After leaving Kafanchan he continued teaching, transferring between schools, but retirement eventually arrived with uncomfortable honesty. His salary stopped, savings proved insufficient, and relationships he had strained over years of strictness offered little support. His children struggled in their own lives. His wife had long since left, and he found himself searching for work, sending applications to schools, tutoring centers, and educational institutions, yet doors closed repeatedly, reputation traveling quietly ahead of him. And when he heard about a technology company in Abuja seeking a mathematics consultant, he saw it as a final chance, preparing carefully, polishing his CV, wearing his best remaining suit, and arriving at the modern office building early, the glass doors reflecting his aging face. Inside the reception area, calm and professional, he gave his name, was asked to wait, and after several minutes he was directed down a corridor to the third door on the left, his heart beating slightly faster, rehearsing answers about curriculum design and student assessment, and when he knocked and heard the voice inviting him in, he opened the door, stepped forward, and froze, because seated behind the desk was a calm, confident man in a tailored shirt, looking up with composed curiosity. And it took 2 full seconds for recognition to strike, 2 seconds in which memory collided with reality, and suddenly the past flooded back, the classroom, the chalkboard, the boy labeled failure, and Toby recognized him at the same moment, yet his expression remained steady, gesturing politely for him to sit, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any spoken word. Mr. Boniface placed his CV on the desk, hands slightly trembling, while Toby reviewed the document carefully, taking his time, then looked up and spoke in an even tone, acknowledging the relevance of his experience, particularly his understanding of gaps in mathematics teaching, and then, after a brief pause, he added that the project focused on rebuilding student confidence, especially for those made to feel incapable, and the words hung between them, clear yet not accusatory, and finally Toby said he remembered Kafanshin and the Board of Failures, not with anger but with calm honesty, explaining that his company aimed to support students like the one he once was, and the question now was whether Mr. Boniface understood the importance of encouragement, and for the first time in many years the older man removed his glasses, revealing tired eyes filled with reflection, and in a quiet voice he admitted he had been wrong, that he had mistaken harshness for discipline, and apologized sincerely, the apology simple but heavy with meaning, and Toby listened silently, considering not revenge but purpose, recognizing that growth sometimes required forgiveness, and after a long pause he nodded, asking if the candidate was willing to help design systems that uplifted struggling learners, and Mr. Boniface answered softly that he could. And in that moment the past and present aligned in an unexpected way, the once feared teacher now sitting humbly before the student he had underestimated, waiting for a chance not only for employment but redemption. The office remained quiet for several seconds after Mr. Boniface's apology, the kind of silence that carries years of memory within it, and Toby leaned back slightly in his chair, studying the man who once stood tall before a classroom and now sat humbly waiting. And instead of seeing the harsh teacher of his childhood, he saw a human being shaped by his own regrets, and slowly he spoke, explaining that the company's mission was not simply to teach mathematics but to rebuild confidence, to ensure that students who struggled were guided patiently rather than labeled, and he described how the software would adapt to each learner's pace, offering encouragement, small victories, and explanations designed to make understanding possible, and as he talked, Mr. Boniface listened carefully, nodding, absorbing each detail as though learning a new philosophy, and finally Toby placed the CV on the desk and said the position required 3 days a week, focusing on curriculum redesign, especially strategies for students who feared mathematics, and then he asked calmly if he was willing to commit to that vision, and Mr. Boniface adjusted his glasses, his voice steady but soft, answering yes, he could, and in that moment the decision was made, not dramatically but with quiet purpose. Toby extended the opportunity, and the once feared teacher accepted, understanding that this role was more than employment, it was a chance to correct mistakes through action, and over the following months Mr. Boniface worked closely with the development team, reviewing lesson structures, suggesting exercises, and gradually shifting his approach, learning to emphasize encouragement, sometimes pausing thoughtfully before recommending a change, as if measuring his words carefully. And Toby observed this transformation with calm satisfaction, not gloating but appreciating growth, and the software launched successfully, reaching schools across the country, helping thousands of students practice mathematics without fear, and occasionally Toby would visit a classroom using the platform, watching children smile as they solved problems step by step, their confidence growing, and each time he remembered the chalkboard labeled failure and felt grateful that his story had taken a different path. While Mr. Boniface too found quiet redemption, receiving messages from teachers who praised the program's supportive approach, and one afternoon he approached Toby's office, thanking him not only for the job but for the chance to change, and Toby simply nodded, saying that everyone deserved an opportunity to grow, and as years continued, the story became a quiet legend within the company, a reminder that success built on resilience could transform not only lives but attitudes. And the lesson remained clear, that cruelty can ignite determination but kindness sustains progress, and that the people who underestimate others today may one day stand before them seeking understanding, and how we respond in that moment defines who we become. And so Toby, once a boy labeled failure, became a man who rewrote the meaning of success, choosing forgiveness over revenge, opportunity over pride, and growth over bitterness, proving that the strongest trees are not those untouched by storms, but those that rise taller after surviving them.